All right, let's dive into a really baffling corner of the justice system, where paperwork seems to take on a life of its own. We're talking about something called paperwork voodoo. And believe me, it can create criminal charges that are, well, pretty much ghosts.
I mean, just think about that question for a second. It sounds like a total riddle, right? A complete legal paradox. How can you have an arrest warrant out for a crime that was never even filed in the court system? It feels like it should be impossible, but it happens.
And to really get our heads around this, we're not just going to talk theory. We're going to look at an actual, real-world case. This is from a public court file in Duncan, British Columbia, file number 45248. And this case, it just lays out the whole bizarre phenomenon perfectly. Okay, and this slide right here, this is the heart of the whole problem. On one side, you've got the document the police hand you on the street. It's called an undertaking, and it clearly says you have to show up in court for a criminal charge of uttering threats. But then, you look at the official court file for that exact same case, and it shows something totally different, a non-criminal thing called a Section 810 peace bond. The criminal charge, it's just gone, nowhere to be found. So that's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? If that criminal charge literally never made it into the court's records, where did it go? And more importantly, if the charge doesn't exist, why in the world would a judge issue a warrant for your arrest? Let's unpack this thing.
To figure this out, you first have to understand that this isn't just one big unified system. You really got three different players on the field: the police, the Crown prosecutors, and the courts themselves. And they all operate in their own lanes.
So it all starts with the police, right? They're on the street, they do the investigation, and they issue that first piece of paper. But that's just the start. The file then goes to Crown Counsel, and they're kind of like the gatekeepers. They get to decide what charges actually move forward. The court registry? They're the official scorekeepers. They only file what the Crown gives them. As one court clerk put it, they're just an unbiased third party. Okay, so now that we know who's playing, let's actually watch the game. The source material calls this a charge shell game. And you know what? That's the perfect description for how a charge can get switched on you using the very same file number without you ever knowing it happened. So here's how it unfolds. Step 1, you're on the street, police hand you that paper for a criminal charge. Step 2, that file gets sent over to the Crown for a review, and this is where the magic trick happens. Step 3, the switch. The Crown prosecutor looks at the file and decides, nah, we're not going to proceed with the criminal charge. Instead, they lower it to a non-criminal peace bond. And this all happens behind a desk, completely out of sight. So by the time we get to step 4, when the official court file is actually created, that original uttering threats charge has already vanished into thin air. It, as the clerk explained, never moved forward into the court system.
And that right there, that's the critical moment. It's where two completely separate realities get created. There's the reality for the person holding the piece of paper, and then there's the totally different reality that exists inside the court's computer. This is the paperwork voodoo.
I mean, let's be super clear here. The person involved is holding a legal document. It was issued by a police officer, and it is compelling them to show up in court to answer to a criminal offense, uttering threats. To them, that is reality.
But if you walk inside the courthouse, that reality just doesn't exist. The court registry, the judge, they're all looking at an official file for a non-criminal Section 810. The two documents don't match at all, but they have the exact same court date and file number. Total confusion. One of our sources just put it so bluntly, and it really nails the feeling of this whole mess. When the official record in the system doesn't match the legal document you were served, it's really hard to call that justice. It feels way more like some kind of bureaucratic sleight of hand. So, we need a name for this, right? Let's call it a ghost charge. It's the perfect term. It's a charge that haunts the paperwork, it makes you do things, but when you actually go looking for it in the official court system, poof, it's not there. It was erased before it ever really existed in court. So you might be thinking, okay, that's a weird paperwork glitch. But this isn't just a quirky problem. This disconnect creates a very, very real trap that has serious consequences, and it leads directly to an arrest warrant. So just try to put yourself in that person's shoes for a minute. You're holding a paper for an uttering threats charge that you think is completely baseless. You might just decide, you know what, I'm not going to court for that. It's a logical decision, but it's a decision based on the ghost charge. But of course, the court has no idea about the ghost charge. So on the court date, the judge calls the case, the person isn't there. The judge looks at the only thing they can see, the official file that says Section 810 peace bond, and issues a warrant for failing to show up for the peace bond, a matter the person was never even told about.
And this quote from the court clerk just perfectly explains the twisted logic of this whole trap. When she was asked how someone could miss a court date for a charge that doesn't exist, her answer is so telling. She says, yeah, they were told to show up for uttering threats. And yeah, that charge got erased, but the system still expected them to show up anyway, and I guess just magically find out that the charge had been secretly changed to something else entirely.
So, after unraveling that whole tangled web, what's the big takeaway here? How do you even begin to navigate a system where the paper in your hand might not be telling you the whole truth?
Okay, here's what you absolutely have to remember. First, that piece of paper the police give you, think of it as a draft, not the final copy. The Crown can, and often does, change things later. And that means the official court file can be totally different from your paperwork. And as we've just seen, that can land you with a warrant for a charge you never knew existed. So, the single most important thing you can do is this. Always call the court registry before your court date. Confirm the time, the place, and, crucially, confirm the exact charge that's on the official file.
And all of this leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Is this whole convoluted paperwork voodoo just a simple bureaucratic mistake, a flaw in the system? Or is it an intentional feature, something designed for administrative efficiency, even if it sets these kinds of traps for people? That's definitely something worth thinking about.